If you have a speech coming up and you're reading over and over your script, trying to memorize everything word for word, you're setting yourself up for failure. In this video, I'm going to show you how to confidently remember your speech without ever having to write out a script or memorize anything. Hi, I'm Dave Mack, and I've been a public speaker and public speaking trainer for the last 16 years. I've trained CEOs, executives, and managers from major global organizations how to deliver confident and engaging speeches. So let's get into it. The major problem people face when they have a speech coming up is the first thing they do when they start preparing is to jump into PowerPoint and start banging out slides, or they start writing out a script. Both of these processes will do one thing. They will make your speech boring and unwatchable. The problem with the slides first is that if you design the slides out, then inevitably what will happen is your speech will follow the slides. You'll use the slides as prompts. That's not a good experience for anyone. And if you want people to actually retain what you're talking about in your speech, you don't want them following along with you as you read slides to them. The second thing is, when you write out a script, what you're doing is you're telling yourself, I'm going to write this out and I'm going to memorize it word for word, and so I can deliver this speech without making any mistakes. And the first thing is, you are going to make mistakes because no one can remember a speech word for word, especially when you're under a lot of time pressure. The second thing is, when you do memorize a script, what you'll do is stand on stage and you'll be trying to remember what comes next, what's the next word, what's the next sentence. And while you're doing that, there'll be long pauses and you kind of sound robotic, and also you're kind of looking up in the air as you're thinking about what's coming next. Again, not a good experience for the audience, and it's a recipe for complete disengagement and for that same audience to think twice before they come to your next speech. So the next time you have to deliver a speech, here is a simple 3-step process that you can follow that doesn't involve scripts or memorization. Step 1, probably the most important foundational step, is just to understand your subject matter. If you have to deliver a speech, a presentation, a TED Talk, whatever it is, and you don't understand the subject matter, no amount of script writing is going to help you. So the first step is to actually sit down and make sure you understand the subject matter really well. Use the time that you would ordinarily have used to do your slides or write out your script to actually understand your subject matter. So after you have that understanding, step number 2 is to decide, what is the takeaway I want the audience to leave with? What is the action I want the audience to take as a result of my talk? Because unless you're doing something like a simple project status update or something like that, the reason you're doing the speech is typically you want the audience to understand something, to learn something, or to take some action after they get back to their desks. If you're doing a sales talk, you might want the audience's action to be to sign up for your new coaching program or something like that. Whatever that takeaway or action is, your speech is not going to go well if you don't decide that up front. So decide it up front and get a piece of paper and write that thing in the middle of the piece of paper. And now that we have that, we move on to step number 3. And step number 3 is to decide what are the 3 things that you need to talk about in your speech to get your audience from where they are when they walk into the room to taking the action or understanding the point or leaving with the takeaway that you've just written in the middle of the page. Try to keep this to 3 points or less. If you go above 3 key points in your speech, the audience is going to struggle to remember things or to keep track of what you're talking about. And once you've decided these 3 points, just write them in bubbles around that key takeaway that you wrote on the piece of paper, and give them numbers: the first talking point, second talking point, third talking point. Now, the key here is that you don't need a script and you don't need to memorize lots of things. But it's very easy to remember 3 key points written in bubbles around a central takeaway that you want the audience to focus on. And that's what you've got now. Now, all you need to do is practice delivering a speech, talking about these 3 points leading to the action step. It's very, very simple. Instead of boring the audience with formalities and this kind of formal writing language that you're going to put on a piece of paper and then memorize and then try and say, which is going to sound terrible, just focus on talking to them in a natural, conversational way about the talking points that you've got on that piece of paper and leading them towards the action step in the middle. So let's look at an example. All right, let's imagine you're the sales manager in your company. So we're planning to deliver a speech about how to get the sales reps more motivated and make more sales. So number 1 is to understand our subject matter. All right, so as the sales manager, presumably we're already going to understand the subject matter really well, but maybe there are some spots that you're not 100% sure of. So what you're going to do is you're going to go back and you're going to look at the sales figures over the years, and then you're going to look at, how sales figures are not so great at the moment, and that you're going to get all that information into your head. Now, the second step is the takeaway or the action that we want the audience to leave the speech with. And in this case, the action is we want the audience of sales reps to leave knowing what are the things I need to do to maximize my sales over the next quarter. Now, step number 3 is to decide our 3 topics to lead us to that action step. So let's just make up a little bit of background so that we're able to decide what these 3 points are. So let's imagine within your organization, sales were really, really good last financial year, but this financial year, they have tanked. And so you've been talking to people in marketing and other sales managers about these problems, and you've all come to the conclusion that what has happened is that after last financial year, some new procedures were implemented, and this involved all sales reps to do a lot more administration work after each sale is made. As a result of all that new administration work, they spend less time on the phone talking to new leads. Therefore, they have less opportunity to make more sales. So the 3 topics we're going to talk about to lead the audience to the action step or the takeaway is, number 1, we're going to describe the bad sales this financial year versus the excellent sales last financial year. This allows us to just set some context and common understanding. The second topic we'll talk about is how we discovered what the issue likely is. The administration work that was introduced at the beginning of this financial year. And finally, we're going to talk about the new red tape-free, administration-free process we're going to implement for all sales reps starting today so that they may spend much more time calling the leads that they have on their books. And now in a typical office environment, especially when you're talking to sales reps whose income is negatively affected by lower sales, if you're saying we're going to relieve you of the administration to allow you to do more sales, they're going to love that. So with those 3 topics and that takeaway, they're likely to be leaving that room very happy, very engaged, and ready to start making more sales. So that's it. Just understand your subject matter really well, know what the takeaway is you want the audience to leave with, and decide the 3 topics that you're going to talk about to lead you to that takeaway. And you don't need a script. And the bonus with this method is that because you haven't memorized a script and because you're not trying to remember all those words and all those sentences that you wrote down and, oh no, I've forgotten one now, what's going to happen is your delivery is going to sound much more natural and much more conversational. And what that means is the audience is much more likely to listen to you, be engaged, and stay with you throughout the talk. And to discover how to make public speaking easy, check out this video next.